And it's quite obvious that it was meant to be. He wanted to force feed a topical film to everyone because he would literally step out from behind the curtain, which was my main problem with the film, and just point out, by the way, did you know that I'm making a film about Iraq right now? And by the way, did you know I was making a film about ecological problems on the planet?
Yep.
So that, if anything, it was not, I won't say it was rushed, because the script was done so long ago, but, it might have probably just done for so long that people forgot to check it and make sure it was good.
My impressions of the movie was the visuals were most excellent, but I question some of the directions that the story took. Like, for instance, if you haven't seen the movie, yeah, there's going to be some spoilers in here, but whatever.
Yeah, how has anybody not seen the movie by this point? I mean, it's what was the last film that was number one at the box office for like 7 or 8 weeks? I mean, come on. If you haven't seen it, then we can't be held responsible.
It's like, for me, it just seems like there were stuff that were added into the film for convenience.
Such as?
Well, the tree being a whole, like, oh, this is our internet. This is how we communicate with everything. That seemed a little bit, alright, so that's what makes this thing important. Okay, let's move on to the next thing.
Well, I think that I didn't have a problem with, in that what he had done is this was of course earlier in the film when he had not decided to step out from behind the curtain and say to the audience directly, I am making an environmental message film, which was unnecessary, because what he did he basically took the Gaia hypothesis, which is that the Earth is a living creature, and made a scientific basis for that to make sense on an alien planet. And in doing so, he created a situation where you really couldn't argue against it, because yes, it is extremely important. It's one thing if you're digging up, Earth, and if you're chopping down a tree and you plan on planting another tree, then that's fine. But if the tree is somehow alive and the tree is part of some kind of vast planet-wide neural network, then you've got you have basically created a situation in which even people who are not environmentally minded, like myself, will look at that situation and go, yes, I can see where we need to figure out some way of conserving this, because this is bigger than what we thought it was. He then, so I didn't have a problem with that. My problem was that he hamstrung himself by spending $300 million or whatever it was to create the film, to immerse you in the film, and then remind you about the real world and thus take you out of the film, which made me insane with rage.
It's one of those things where it's like, you think you can go to this movie and be like, okay, I'm going to be entertained for a very long time, because it was a rather long film. But yet you have those parts where, like, alright, now I'm thinking about things, and the entertainment is just not there anymore.
Yeah, and what was crazy was that he had set up a film that was perfect in that you could watch it either way if you wanted to. You could read into it more than he had on the screen very easily, and we didn't have to be told what he was making the film about. It was quite apparent. You could very easily read between the lines and say, okay, this is what he has in mind. I think it's when you don't trust your audience and you feel you have to step out from behind the curtain and point out to them what you're doing, then you're basically, me as an audience member, you're saying, I don't think you're smart enough to catch what I'm doing. Let me spell it out for you, which I find insulting.
My other beef with the movie was that there was a lack of development on some characters. They were pretty much, your stereotypical villain, not too much development with him. It's like, okay, let's just get what we came for, and then we'll go home and we'll eat meat. Because that's what we do. We are manly men, and we are warriors, and we do not care about other people because we are for us and not for you.
Pass the meat.
You know, you would think that there will be a little more development, a little more difference between just your regular, I just don't care about your culture. I just want your job done.
I see what you mean. I mean, a lot of people have mentioned that they found the story simplistic and it's dances with 10-foot tall cats with carbon fiber bones, all kinds of things. And the weakness of the story never really bothered me because I thought that the performances were strong, and I thought that the visuals were strong enough to carry it. But I mean, yeah, you had an archetypal villain, but it's okay. I mean, it in my book anyway, because it's kind of, you can have kind of a cinematic shorthand of, well, we've seen this villain before, we know who he is, we don't have to spend a lot of time developing him, we can just get to the part where, he can fight things. And you know what? If you're going to do a film like that, I'm okay, because not every film has to have complex character development and everything else. I think with the complex character of the film, to me, was the actual world itself. They had done such a great job creating a world, a believable end-to-end world, that I was willing to forgive a whole lot. But then he did unforgivable moronic things. But no, I mean, you could always have done different things with the story to make it interesting. I think Boing Boing had a list of, here's 5 ways that the plot of Avatar could have been improved, and that's fine. I mean, there's certainly ways to do that. I think part of the problem that we're having, all of us collectively, in processing Avatar, is that it really was a 12-year long film. And yes, we all do appreciate the visuals, because if you talk to anybody, I haven't heard anybody yet say, those visuals sucked. I mean, I haven't heard that at all. But you would think with 12 years of a script that at some point it would have been improved or evolved or something. But I think that's our problem, is that if this film had taken 2 years to make, I don't think we would have cared as much, because, we've gone and seen and enjoyed a hell of a lot less. I think it's the timeline that screws with us.
What I'm wondering is, does this film, in my view it doesn't, but there's been some speculation and discussion about a sequel. I'm thinking, leave it as a standalone film, because there really isn't from what I see, there isn't any point into going back to that planet and fiddling around with like another battle or something.
Well, what I think the interesting film that you could do as a follow-up would be to come back to Earth and basically, so it doesn't have to be all about battles and such. Now that they've sort of proclaimed that moon to be off limits, the smart bet would be to try to negotiate with Earth to, hey, we know you need this stuff, so we'll give it to you if you leave us alone under these terms. So, I mean, there's ways that you could do a sequel. There will be talk about a sequel. Like I said, it may have been 8 weeks. It was number 1 for 7 weeks. It broke all manner of records and proved that Cameron can still basically write his own ticket. So, I mean, they were talking about doing a sequel to Titanic, is the one that I always bring up when I'm talking about crazy ideas for sequels.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, it'll at least be put into development, and a lot of money will be spent on it, and people will make good coin off of it. Now, whether it ever comes out, I have no idea, but it will definitely be kicked around.